Joining us now are Laura Barone Lopez, MSNBC White House correspondent, and Tolu Olorunipa, staff writer at The Atlantic and co-author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning book, His Name is George Floyd, One Man's Life and the Struggle for Racial Justice. Thank you both for joining us this morning, very early and on set. Laura, I want to start with you because you and our colleague Vaughn Hilliard wrote this piece that kind of encapsulated exactly what a lot of people were thinking, and we'll start there. A rigorous three-part process typically plays out after the National Park Service submits a plan for new construction at the White House. The 12-member National Capital Planning Commission then ensures the project is in compliance with environmental laws, historical preservation laws, and regulations. This week's demolition began without any plan being submitted to the NCPC. An administration official told MSNBC that construction plans have not yet been submitted, but that they will be at an appropriate time. AKA, we're just doing whatever the hell we want when we want to do it. That seems to be kind of the operating ethos of this White House.
It does. I mean, when Caroline Leavitt was pressed on this, why no plans were submitted, she essentially just said, look, other presidents have done this, but without specifying that other presidents went through a process, including President Trump, who during his first term went through the regular process with the National Capital Planning Commission, which is that main entity, which, you know, I spoke to a former chair who had been chair for 9 years, including from the Obama administration into part of the Trump administration. And that chair, Preston Bryant, said that never in his 9 years was demolition separated from construction in terms of the plans that were submitted to this committee, that they oversaw all of it, and that typically that review process would take about a year. So it's just stunning that the administration is deciding, because they can essentially, and because who's going to hold them accountable, that they're going to move forward with this, regardless of the consequences.
And it is a perfect encapsulation of how the president himself, especially, have kind of behaved and operated this entire year.
It is. I mean, the president, you know, whether it's, as you laid out in the introduction, whether it's the strikes in the Caribbean, whether it's saying that he wants to use the Justice Department any way he sees fit and potentially paying him. Also, to me, one of the biggest aspects of this ballroom are the donors, which is that the Trust for the National Mall is this nonprofit that oversees the management of these donations. And we asked them, how are you making sure that there aren't conflicts of interest, there aren't quid pro quo arrangements? And they didn't provide an answer. They essentially just said it's our role with overseeing it, and always has been, with overseeing private donations to any kind of project like this. But the administration also dismisses any questions like that. Even though Google is facing a lawsuit from the Justice Department and Union Pacific Railroad is looking to have a big merger with another railroad, and they have to get federal approval for that. And they're also someone who donated to this ballroom. You know,
Tolu, speaking of, you know, dismissing questions and concerns, Congress seems to be completely absent from any sort of aspect of this, except, you know, there are some Republicans who are like, no big deal. Listen to Senators Hawley and Cornyn, what they had to say about this.
I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's that
sounded like
I don't understand what the criticism is about the funding. It's not taxpayer money. I mean, it's being funded by the president and other willing donors. If the president wants to spend his money and these folks want to pay to give the United States a new ballroom.
Well, every president, to my knowledge, I read the history of presidents doing renovations in the White House, and the president's going to pay for it.
Okay, Tolu. He's not spending his own money. We don't know who a lot of these donors might be or where the money's coming from. And in terms of there's renovations, and then there's mass construction, which is happening at the former East Wing.
Yeah, imagine if President Obama or even President Biden had done this to the White House. These senators would be speaking a very different tune. It's very clear that they've gotten their talking points from the White House. They're saying a lot of the same things that we heard from the podium. And it is important also to note that even though this week has felt like a year, a lot of what Trump has done over the past week seems to be in response to the No Kings protest, which you know happened on Saturday. He obviously got under his skin. He was posting on social media about it, and he is lashing out. He's trying to show that he is the person who can be a king in effect by doing whatever he wants to do. And Congress typically in our system would be the co-equal branch of government that would say, stop, slow down, don't do this. But Republicans in Congress have given Trump wide berth and given him the ability to do whatever he wants.
Well, and they've also acquiesced their power when it comes to appropriations and now the shutdown. And Mike Johnson has essentially assumed this position of, I hold no power, I can't accomplish anything, this is all in Democrats' hands, and has given Trump runway to use the shutdown to continue the bulldozing of the federal government and bureaucracy and continue getting rid of all sorts of processes and consensus-driven ways to get things done. I mean, you wrote a really great piece that kind of outlines some of the things that Trump has completely demolished during these past few weeks since the shutdown began. What do you think is the thing that is most irreparable when all of this will be said and done and unable for anyone to pull back on?
Well, you have to remember that we've had government shutdowns for quite a while in this system, and they typically follow a cadence. They follow a certain kind of rule book. President Trump has blown all of that up. He's weaponized this shutdown. He's tried to go after Democratic policies, Democratic programs. He's pulled billions of dollars away from Democratic districts and tried to steer the money to Republicans. We've never seen a president do this in the past. And as you've mentioned, the House has been out since September 19th. They have not been doing anything of effect in terms of voting to close or end this shutdown. And there was a report recently that President Trump said that I am the speaker and the president, basically essentially saying that he is taking over the co-equal branch of government of Congress. And we've never seen a president do that. And in many ways, that is an irreparable change in the way our government works.
And the speaker, the president, and the contractor.
And the contractor. I mean, the president typically at least tries to have more than one meeting with the opposing party when there's shutdowns. I remember when there were, I think it was debt ceiling negotiations where Biden canceled that trip. And which pissed all of us off because we already spent the money on the plane to get over there. But he canceled the trip to stay and have those negotiations. Laura, I want to go to you on Steve Bannon. We had him with that quote, but I want to play one more from his interview with The Economist.
I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious. But he's an instrument of divine will, and you could tell this of how he's pulled this off. We need him for at least one more term, right? And he'll get that in 28.
3, 2.
What? Oh.
Is he just trolling us, or is there? It seems to me that trial balloons matter, and in the run-up to January 6th, there were a lot of trial balloons that were thrown up. The Stop the Steal conversation happened way before the election. This feels similar to that to me. Maybe I'm being a little dramatic about it, but I think what we have seen from folks like Steve Bannon is that they are fine with throwing out the Constitution when it fits them.
Yeah, I don't think that it's alarmist to have this conversation because of the fact that Steve Bannon has repeatedly said this, and Donald Trump puts hats in front of Democratic members of Congress that say Trump 2028. They send hats like that to Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. And when you talk to, people who work for Gavin Newsom, who work for J.B. Pritzker, who work for these Democratic governors across the country, they're legitimately concerned that, the militarization of their cities is going to continue through the 2026 midterms, could very well extend all the way to the 2028 presidential. And all for what? For potentially suppressing the vote. Now, will they be successful in suppressing the vote? I don't know. But there are a lot of steps that the president is taking to consolidate power to ensure that there's no dissent among his party. And he's taking the unitary executive theory to the max. And you see it every step along the way.
And it's interesting because it's not even necessarily right now, at least in Steve Bannon's words, about suppressing the vote, right? He is now trying to just frame this as this is what the populist movement wants. Why suppress the will of the people?
And it's what God wants. Divine is like, how do you get past that? An instrument of divine providence.
Hearing that on a Sunday feels sacrilegious. I'm just gonna. That's just